Hello, everyone. I'm here with Alyssa of ArcVida. We're going to talk about the first day of our networking prompts, which was how to effectively network in person. So we'll start right away. We'll just kick it off with our first question, which was we're kind of doing a mix. So do people tend to have different luck with casual business networking over professional? And does the way you look have any effect on networking skills?
I love that question because ArcVida thinks of networking as work-focused conversations with the intent to learn. And you can have that question anywhere, that conversation anywhere. So luck isn't really about where you're talking to someone. It's about if you're having a good conversation with someone who's a professional. And I would say you can kind of create more luck by creating more opportunity to talk about it. What has been your experience with this?
I think it kind of depends on some of the purpose, right? Like there's luck with business kind of professional networking where you're going in, people are there usually for a reason, right? And so maybe it's easier to talk about the thing you're looking for. But I think some casual networking can often lead to like tons of serendipitous connections and moments. People I feel like are a little bit more willing sometimes when it's casual to open up their mind around like, oh, let me get you connected to my friend who does this thing. Has been a little bit more of like my experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. And I would add to that a casual event with people who are in your functional field, or let's say an alumni event, is the best of both worlds because
Right.
people are going to be friendly, but also going to have this lens of professional.
Yeah.
And then what do you think about how do you think it affects like what you look like, affects your results?
Yeah. I guess I would say, for the more professional business networking, you can't really go wrong with business casual, but I do think that depending on kind of the role and industry you're in to kind of almost dress that part as well. I'm thinking about maybe a social media manager at more of an edgy brand, showing up in something that's maybe brighter or edgier or something, just represents what they're looking for or what they currently do. Because then it feels like it goes with it. It doesn't feel like you're like out of place. So that's kind of how I think about it. But
yeah, I would agree with that. I think the number one thing is to be appropriate to the occasion. And I think you're referencing a little bit of personal brand, which is, if you're in fashion, you should have fabulous shoes. And I would add to that, I spent many years, happily networking in finance and investment banking and those kinds of rooms. And a wonderful suit that is not too tight or fits you perfectly is very appropriate in that kind of setting. So be comfortable, don't be uncomfortable. It should fit. And yeah, definitely on brand, I think, with your thing. Now as an entrepreneur, tennis shoes and a blazer I can wear that almost anywhere.
Yeah, totally. Like
what are you wearing as a marketing director for a social platform? What are you wearing?
Yeah, I think I'm more of like, I'm thinking like black jeans that look nice with like some boots and a nice like top that's maybe more flowy. Like that feels fine to me. I think that seems like also just more me than, and I don't know, our brand. And it looks fine, but I'm not trying too hard. I think that's kind of how I
will say definitely post-COVID, I've seen, and this was true also for recent college graduates, like everybody had the black suit with the white shirt, like, don't be that person. If you can if that's what you have to wear, like, okay, but like add some color, add something a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I hope that is helpful for, at least what to wear. It's kind of such a personal thing, but yeah. Okay, our next question was around how to keep people engaged. I want to, learn about them, but I also, want to make my points across. Like, how do I keep a conversation interesting?
I do love this question. So Molly Beck has written a book called Reach Out, and I love her advice on this topic, which is don't be boring. At ArcVida, one of our core values is curiosity, and definitely any client of ours remembers like reach out with curiosity, be open. And I firmly believe that if I am insanely curious about you and interested in what you're doing and what you have to say, that I'm probably not going to bore you. What do you think? Do you have any tricks here?
I think that's so true. Asking people also questions they might not be used to hearing, like, everybody's like, so what do you do? And I'm like, what if you said, like, what do you love? Like a different kind of prompt that someone's like, oh, that's different. Like that's refreshing, I think
Yeah.
is really good. Um, do you
I
think,
would add to
yeah,
that, I would add to that too, like at an event, you can always ask like, oh, what's your connection to your organization? Have you been here before? Like just to get people talking about something that's easy to answer. And then having a go-to question is a great idea. I love that.
yeah, I guess like a go-to question, something that ties them to the event that's easy, you can just jump in. They're kind of expecting it. Um, what do you feel like? Do you think that there's this maybe a need? Like some people are like, I want to also like say what I'm here for and get my point across. Do you think that's secondary or kind of like it will happen, especially with the curiosity that will be reciprocated?
Yeah, I mean, I think a fundamental error that people make in networking in general is transactional and not relational, which is, you and I have talked about this, but this is why Rise is so cool, because you're, being holistic about everything, not just, the business side, but a relationship is I'm curious about you, I'm interested in meeting you. I don't feel like I have to know your sign and your birthday and where you live and if you have pets right now. Like that would be super weird. And likewise, if I came at you with here's my favorite color and where I live and where I'm going on vacation, okay. So I think knowing what to say is really big. But also it's a real mistake to think that you're having the relationship when you meet somebody. Like
Yeah,
I'm just meeting you. Like, hi, nice to meet you. Um,
really good point. Mhm.
that being said, how would you, I know there's always a good answer to tell me about yourself. How would you answer that question right now, Lucy?
Yeah, I think what tell me about myself, there's kind of like the currently what I do, um,
Mhm.
maybe a couple interests that I have, and then I would say either like what I'm looking for or who I'm looking to connect with. So, tell me about yourself. I'm Lucy. I help our marketing at Rise, which is a next gen social network to get people connected to their next big thing. As a person, I love getting outside. I love roller skating, and I'm really hoping. I'm excited to be here today because I want to connect with people who want to help others get amplified and like find opportunities to contribute to blogs and become kind of a thought leader in their space. So that's
Yeah,
probably why I would bring it up. Yeah.
and you're doing something that makes conversation flow and that good networkers always do, which is you're giving people multiple hooks. Like, hey, here's my job if you want to talk about that. Here's, two hobbies that are pretty different, being outside and roller skating. Like I could talk about either of those with you.
Yeah.
And you're also adding that like my why is this, like
Mhm.
I'd like to meet people, and then I can say like, oh, I want to talk to you about roller skating, or oh, I do some blogging, let me chat with you about that. So I think that response of I'm giving you hooks so
Yeah.
that you can listen to me and decide how you want to engage really creates a space for authentic connection,
Yeah.
even if it's short.
Yeah.
I remember Lucy, she's the one who likes to roller skate.
Yeah. They're like, I think so and so likes camping too. Like you should talk to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
All those connections forge. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any extra to add on to like the kind of how you either like kind of pitch yourself or talk about yourself?
Yeah. So just from the standpoint of a couple of like mistakes people make, one is for people who are more experienced. I don't know when this became popular, and maybe you've heard this, Lucy, but I have 20 years of it. Like, oh my gosh, like, are you already a fossil? Like, don't start with I have 20 years of experience doing blah, blah, blah. No.
Yeah.
And then for younger people, like there is a little bit of a sense of like, I have to tell you where I was born. No, you don't.
Uh,
No, no, you can get to that. So really, keeping it light, like why am I here? What am I looking for? How's it going? So I would say an example of that might be like, if I'll just give you my example, and then I do have a template I want to share as well, so people can, we're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to help you figure out exactly what you're going to say. So my introduction right now at a networking event looks like, I'm Elissa. I'm co-founder and CEO of ArcVida. ArcVida is changing the way that professionals find and land fulfilling work, and we're doing that with a tech platform all online. I am actually in Chicago right now because a friend of mine is having a pretty important graduation, and man, what a great city this is. So much rain, the flowers are amazing. I can't wait. I'm going to try to get out by the river walk. In terms of this event, like I'm really curious about definitely social networking is so important. And I'm just interested in how people are connecting together now in a post-COVID and remote work from home world. So I'm interested in talking to people about that kind of work.
yeah, totally. And you're giving almost like not necessarily like, I want to sell people this thing. It's like, I just want to talk, like, it's a more open thing that people feel like very comfortable engaging with and talking about, and how that will lead to trust and openness to future things that you're want to talk about or offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing there too, like especially in a city like Chicago, anywhere in Texas, like anywhere where there's a bunch of like pride, it's super fun to like bring in the city
Really,
connection because people do like there's where they live, or
yeah.
in LA they like to complain about traffic. So, pick your poison, whatever, but it gives
Yeah.
people something to hook into. Let me share that template. Okay, and if you're watching this video, you'll just go ahead and pause this for a second, but so you'll be able to see how to do this. But what we recommend is that you actually write this out, this interest statement out. If you're going to an in-person networking event or even just having an informational interview, that you have this kind of written out. So this particular template is written towards someone who's maybe more junior, maybe less than 5 years of work experience. If you're more senior, you'll tailor it to add a little bit of like, I really started my career in strategy consulting, but then I moved into finance before I became an entrepreneur, add a little bit there. But the point of writing this is that if you actually take the time to write out what you're interested in, why you're interested in it, and talk a little bit more about who you are in the world, then you'll be able to go ahead and talk about it when you're there. Did you, when you were networking to get a job, did you write this kind of?
Yeah, I definitely would. This was really helpful for me as a template when I was looking for work around pre-rise, around it just helps you understand like the important things to say, like, oh, I studied this and this, I worked in this, like I am looking because of my experience, it just gives you like, you can move it around, but it helps you get words on paper to explain what you're looking for and who you are, which was super helpful. Yeah.
It is super helpful. The other thing is I'm just thinking too, like, I can't imagine you ever delivered the whole thing at once. Like you would say like a sentence or so about it, right?
Yeah, it's like it's almost like as you're, even like with say like a cover letter that you're writing, there's maybe little things that you write about yourself, like I studied this, and so now I have experience in this, or it's little chunks of information that you can kind of pull up and use situationally. So I think that that's similar to this template of, I'm using just like, yeah, I wouldn't be like, here's the whole entire thing about myself, maybe right away in person. But if I'm reaching out online, which we'll get to tomorrow, maybe I'll do more. I'll write more in one piece.
For sure.
Our next question is around moving, like starting over in a new place and what that's like to network in person. So it's like, help, I've moved to a new city, I'm looking for a job and I don't know where to start. So do you have any advice?
Absolutely. So my favorite advice right now is around is probably old advice. So ArcVida's probably 30% of our clients, I haven't looked at the data recently, but 30% when we last looked at the data moved during the process of career transition with ArcVida. So it's super common that people are moving while they're looking for new jobs. It's life transition.
Yeah.
Our number one tip for networking in general is find friends of friends, people you know that might know people. Like, oh, hey, Lucy, you're in Seattle. My best friend's daughter is in Seattle and she just graduated. Can you connect with her? Oh, okay. Yeah. So find somebody you can start connecting with. And now actually, um, her, or she knows you, maybe is more likely given the scenario. And she can say, like, oh, well, what do you think's a good networking event for women in marketing or people in marketing and tech marketing? And you could say, oh, well, I don't know that many, but I did go to this one, right?
Yep.
And so really hooking into the network. I also use Eventbrite to find events. What do you
Yeah.
do when you, yeah?
I think like Eventbrite is great. I think like even like Meetup, like there's professional networking and in-person networking, but sometimes you're going to a new city, it's almost just like starting those connections and then it leads into things around like professional stuff. So having it be like maybe a meetup for an event, like an interest that you have, or maybe it's like there's tons of like hiking clubs and things like that. And then you start talking to people and mentioning like, I'm new, I'm looking for a job. And people are, especially sometimes in these more casual situations, really helpful. But there's a lot of professional things listed on that as well. I mean, I also think like sometimes, say like Bumble BFF can be like finding people like it's just, like it's sometimes feels weird to people, but it's a great way to connect with news and just new people, and just you're starting with text, right? So you're like, hey, I'm new, like are there any events that you've really liked in the city, and almost just like using them to obviously make friends, but then getting ideas for where to go and where to meet people.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting tip. It sounds time consuming to me, which probably reflects more about my life stage than anything else. The big three are probably alumni events. So now that there's more
Yeah.
in person, most colleges and universities have a very strong local presence, but then they'll also have sort of regional offshoots, different places, depending on how big your school is. And then there is different industries will have things. So sometimes like healthcare or tech, or if there's, certainly like New York or LA, there's huge industries. But I promise you, with Amazon and Microsoft up in Seattle, for example, there are tech meetups every day somewhere. And then my third tip, and this probably relates more for people who already are very clear on what industry they're in. But if you are a functional specialist, like a marketer or human resources or something like that, really looking for the strong local chapters that are doing work. So I was helping a client with this the other day. The Society of Human Resources Management, SHRM is what they call themselves, has events, and they have really strong local chapters. So moving to a new city, for sure, if like, oh, I'm in marketing or I'm in HR, like going to find those professional associations and tapping into those events. Does Rise have any in-person events?
We are working on bringing in-person events back. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's a thing. Right now we have a partnership with General Assembly, so kind of helping them talk about like what they're doing in their in-person events. But that's we're bringing them back soon. Right now, tons of online stuff though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even in a new city, online is a great place. But today we're talking about in person. So hope as you're moving to your new city. Yeah, as you're moving into your new city, I hope that gives you good ideas about where to go.
Yeah. Okay, our last section is on next steps. So we have two questions here. One is asking, is it too forward to ask how to get in contact with an individual after, at a networking event, or do you kind of just leave them your information and hope they get in touch with you? And then if not, if you're, have their contact, how long are you supposed to wait? Like, do you talk to them immediately, wait a few days? Is there anything you recommend around there?
So when I heard this question, it kind of made me laugh because it's like a dating protocol
Yeah.
question. Okay, I wasn't the only one who, okay.
Yeah.
So the good news about professional networking is that everybody is there to meet you and you're there to meet them. So a lot of the weirdness that you might feel in a dating or similar situation shouldn't be there at all. I actually like to end a networking, like if I meet you, I like to end the networking conversation with like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you. Let's connect so that we can, let's connect on social media so that we can stay in touch. Like, what's your favorite platform? And you, of course, would say Rise, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I automatically connect. And then I'll send a note. I almost like the next day, I might send a note like, hey, great to meet you. What's your take on that?
I agree. I think, something is, it's almost like people give out their emails so fast, but phone numbers can be a little bit trickier. But I think that the idea of like, let's connect on social, kind of like a friend, a little bit lower lift for them. It's just like, yeah, it's easy. It also gives you the opportunity to continue to like pop up, that you're kind of, you post something, or, say, you're on Rise and you connect and suddenly you posted a quick win. It's a way to kind of reconnect, and stay top of mind. And then I think as far as the how long to wait, I mean, I think the next day to say, hey, it was so great to meet you yesterday. Maybe have something like, would love to continue the conversation around this, or something that can kind of keep what you were talking about going, if that's applicable. I think, sometimes it's just like, it's a great new contact. I have this idea of what you're, looking for, what you do, who you are. But maybe there's not a huge conversation moving forward right away.
Yeah, and this goes back to, ArcVida's definition of networking is work-focused conversations with an intent to learn, right? So you learned something when you met the person. So Lucy, when you introduced yourself to me, I learned that you're, thinking about blogging and amplifying people. And I would love to follow up with you because I know some people who do wonderful writing, and I think that this could be a cool connection for you. So I'm going to do that tomorrow because I met you and I have this in my head. And then certainly when you are networking for a job, you're going to be very methodical about it. So you're going to follow up and you're going to say, Lucy, so great to meet you. Loved your energy. I definitely think the roller skating is such a fun hobby right now. And I would really like to talk to you about your career in marketing. Could we spend 15-20 minutes on a virtual coffee, or if in person seems more fun, let me know. I'm pretty flexible in the afternoons for virtual. In person, I could do next Monday or Tuesday if that works for you.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah.
And then you say whatever you say, right? I'm traveling, or like,
Yeah,
yes or no. And then, yeah, but that is the way to keep it going. And then the other thing I would say for people, again, going back to this idea of relationship, not transaction, like nobody wants to be pitched. Everybody wants friends. Like you don't need to meet the hiring manager, be hired. You just need people to get to know someone. And then, when you get to know people, somebody's gonna tell Lucy, oh, I'm desperate to hire a social media manager. And you're like, oh, I met this person who's really excited to be hired.
Yeah.
And that's how that's gonna flow.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that kind of, where Rise is really about like proactive kind of recruitment and building like conversations that are authentic and totally aligned with it. Like, let's keep the transactional, like, for like out of networking, and that some of the best connections and opportunities and referrals for jobs like come through these more casual connections that eventually you can say, oh, I see you just moved to this company. I'd love to, I don't know, there's so many opportunities of different scenarios that go through my mind of reaching out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we always, everyone that works with us has heard me say, humans hire humans. Like when you're thinking about your next, if you're, if salesperson selling business or in marketing, making a partnership or looking for a job, like you want to do business with people you like, and you like people you trust, and you trust people you know. So networking to meet someone is just the first way that you're gonna get
Build
to do
trust.
business together. And then of course, the beautiful thing about business is that it's so interconnected. You might never do business with a person directly, but they'll introduce you to someone or vice versa, and then
Yeah.
there's your career.
Yeah. And so much of this, like this is also, I feel like the strategies talked about today apply to the more casual networking and online that we'll be talking about this week. But something specifically special maybe about in person is just, it often, if you're in your location, it's like your community and like the power of that and how it expands, that kind of clout of creating connections where you live, I think is really strong. But also as you're traveling and then maybe even new cities you're thinking about going to more often, like it's just you can get to that knowing and trust almost maybe a little faster with the in-person stuff. It's kind of my sense.
Absolutely. And something about the way you said that made me realize we didn't even talk about one of the most effective ways to do this, which is to show up repeatedly. So whether it's PTA or church or weekly kickball game or anything like that, certainly your alumni, you should go to all of your local alumni events, but anything where you can just keep showing up and like, oh, I love coming to these, I've met you before, great to see you again. Like this is how you're finding another way to definitely build community and also to strengthen your network, not just meet new people, but to also feel connected within your area.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, show up repeatedly. I think like sometimes I think about connections and community as like a little bit of a formula of depth of conversation times number of exposures, that like you can talk a really deep conversation and only meet someone like once and it's great, or you can meet people like every day and only go so deep. But if you can have both, it's like such a connection.
Yeah, for sure. And the last I went to a USC alumni event, it must have been about a month ago now, but I showed up and you never know who's coming, right? And so one of the people who was there, someone that I was actually a mentor, I mentored college undergraduates through a formal program at USC for 5 years. So he was one of the other, there was 300 mentors, and I got to know him through that work. And then, he and his wife came to our wedding, and like, this person is not a random, right? I know this person. And so he and I were very happy to meet each other. And then in a small group, I was meeting another woman. He and I were meeting another woman and another person for the same first time, right? But we're able to bring this energy of like, gosh, it's so great to be together. How are you? I'm so happy to see you. I think you're a wonderful professional. Oh, let's meet you. Like, where it doesn't feel so awkward, like everybody's a first timer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's really good advice. Well, thank you for the time today on in person, and for everybody watching, stay tuned for more themes throughout this week. That will be resources for however you want.
I love it. I love it. Talk to you soon.